to close.
We had 0 cases the whole spring semester on campus, and the New York Times actually was on campus in violation of no trespassing sign.
The president of Liberty University, Jerry Falwell, and his wife, Becky, discussed the impacts or lack thereof on the university's campus. And he was the Attorney General for Nebraska. Don Stenberg joins me for a frank discussion as much of the nation slowly starts moving again.
A lot of the orders we're seeing now are no longer constitutionally justified based on the facts as we know them today.
Former White House Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland is back.
What General Flynn did with the Russian ambassador, talking to the Russian ambassador, not only was that allowed, it would have been a malpractice of foreign policy if he hadn't talked to the Russian ambassador.
And voting by mail, is your ballot really safe? That and so much more.
The teacher blew what's called a whistle. I hate people that blow whistles.
Right now in America, this week. Welcome to America This Week. I'm Eric Bolling, coming to you from Haven Hair and Skin Salon in Charleston, South Carolina. It was just a few weeks ago when the doors were closed, and now, finally some good news. They're back in business. This is the process so many small businesses are facing right now, and they need your help. I'm hoping to return to the D.C. swamp soon myself, and whether I'm there or here, I'll continue to hold our leaders accountable and promise to ask the questions the mainstream media just refuses to. In presidential elections, it's been very difficult to beat the incumbent. With 45 presidents spanning the entire 244 years of our republic, only 5 presidents failed to win re-election: Taft, Hoover, Ford, Carter, and Bush 41. There are less than 6 months to go in this election, so every day counts. Every comment matters, especially for the guy who wants to beat a popular President Trump. That's why this comment has Democrats shaking in their boots.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
That comment rang loudly throughout the black community. BET co-founder Robert Johnson called the Biden comment arrogant and suggested Biden apologize to every black man and woman he meets. Hip-hop mogul P. Diddy tweeted at Biden saying that he had already told Biden that the black vote isn't free. The backlash has been fierce, from African-American football stars to celebrities to thought leaders. The black community is vocally bashing Biden for that comment. This is Biden's deplorable moment. Biden took the black vote for granted. If you don't vote for me, then you're not black. That's the most audacious, pompous, and downright presumptuous comment of the 2020 election cycle. Joe Biden presumed blacks would, and worse, should vote for him just because they're black and he's a Democrat. That's outright disrespect for African Americans' intelligence and their ability to make an individual decision. And besides, who the heck does Biden think he is telling black men and women he will decide whether or not they're black? That's gutsy or dumb. Biden lost a huge number of black voters with that comment. His job now is to win them back. Biden has to prove that comment was a mistake, one of his many gaffes, and not an underlying belief he holds. Listen to Joe recite the most important paragraph in the Declaration of Independence, or at least try to.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by the go. You know the thing.
So if you're black, you have to wonder how such an important idea, the basis for equality in America, how could the man who wants the black vote forget that point? Allow me to lend you a hand, old Joe. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So get it, Joe? We're all equal, black, white, brown, or other. And we all maintain equal God-given rights under the law to pursue our passions and our desires. Now, don't get mad at me, Joe. I see how it goes when you get upset, and it ain't pretty.
No, you haven't. You're a lion, dog, face, pony, shoulder.
I'd like to bring in Temple University professor and host of BET News, Mark Lamont Hill, a good friend of mine for a long time. Mark, let's just go right here. What did I get right? What did I get wrong in that monologue?
I think that they were audacious. I think they were disrespectful. I think it's completely out of place for any person, but especially a white person, to tell me that I'm not sufficiently black if I don't vote for Joe Biden. I wouldn't go around telling black people whether they're black enough or not. That might be an internal joke black people might make it, in private circles, just like everyone does. But no, it's certainly improper, I'll say, for Joe Biden to do so. Where I disagree with you, though, I don't think that Joe Biden lost a big chunk of the black vote, at least to the extent that I don't think black people said, you know what, after that Biden comment, I'm now going Trump. I think it annoyed some people.
I watch some of the names, P. Diddy, there's football stars, the NAACP, the owner, the founder of the network that you do news on, Robert Johnson says it's his deplorable, I got to say, it's his deplorables moment. When Hillary Clinton took the voters for granted and said, oh, those deplorables, she didn't see that coming. I don't think Biden is going to see the wave of the amount of black vote he's lost. I know he's worried about it. Here's how I know, Mark. He doubled down. He said Charlemagne the God was being a wise guy. Instead of eating it and said, you said something stupid, Joe, I shouldn't have done that, he's kind of blaming the host.
Yeah, later on that evening, if you remember, he did say, he did apologize. He said, I was out of line and I don't take the black vote for granted. I wish he would have done that sooner and faster in the day, but he got it done that day. And I think that was the right response. I think you're right. Diddy did push back, and Diddy's been saying for a couple of weeks now, don't take the black vote for granted. But I also know that Diddy is not supporting Trump. So there's a way that we can criticize Biden, but still not be pro-Trump. And I think we have to create room for that. One of my criticisms of the Biden campaign has been, or Biden supporters, has been, they make it sound like anytime you criticize Biden, you're out of line or you're somehow going for the other side, whatever that means. For me, I want to say, look, if as somebody on the left, my goal is to get Trump out of office. But it doesn't mean I'm going to lay down my agenda, my values, my culture, my integrity for Joe Biden. I'm going to challenge Joe Biden. I'm going to push Joe Biden. But I also want to get rid of Trump. We can do both at the same time. Joe Biden made his job a lot harder last week with those comments. But I do think that it's not insurmountable.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have to leave it here, Mark. Good friend, thank you for coming on. But I will tell you, though, it's not just voting for Trump that could be a problem for Joe. It's also not voting for Joe, which could be a problem come November 2020. Mark Lamont Hill, thank you very much for your time. White House trade advisor and assistant to the president, Peter Navarro, is making some headlines when it comes to the U.S.-China policy. Listen to these clips from This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Then Fox's Lou Dobbs getting a little heated up. Listen.
You say the Chinese took down the American economy. So you're saying they deliberately unleashed the COVID virus on the United States? Do you have any evidence for that?
I did not say they deliberately did it, but their China virus, let's go over the facts here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The virus was spawned in Wuhan province. Patient 0 was in November.
No, you come on. You come on this broadcast and start talking nonsense. I just complimented you for doing the right thing. You're peddling pablum and BS, and I don't think I like it.
Peter Navarro joins me now. Peter, both sides seem to have a hard time with the China policy. Let's clear up the confusion. You know what? I know you're a tough guy, and I know Peter Navarro for a long time. Peter Navarro is going to advise the president to be a tough guy with China. What's the real policy?
The real policy is make it here. If we learned anything, Eric, from this whole crisis with China basically unleashing a global pandemic and then trying to withhold masks and other things that we need to defend ourselves, it's like, hey, well, let's get this stuff home. So I think this is a wake-up call for the remaining few Americans who don't understand yet that the Chinese Communist Party is not a friend of America, and when push comes to shove, they're going to try to hurt us rather than help us. So that's the overarching policy here. The question is kind of, what do we do? And my focus, Eric, during this pandemic, which China created, has been to make sure that our doctors and nurses on the front lines have enough personal protective equipment to defend themselves, and then the patients, the Americans who get the China virus, have enough of the drugs and the ventilators and everything in between they have in order to have their best chance of survival. And Eric, one of the beautiful things that Donald Trump has done as president is within the space of just 90 days move from what looked to be a dire situation with ventilators to become essentially the export king of ventilators for the world. We're sending them off to more than 20
Peter,
countries
but hold on,
now.
come on. Listen,
we're going to have over 100,000 in stock.
Peter, this is you and I. We don't care about
Yes,
ventilators
sir.
anymore. This is America. You know what we care about? We care about 100,000 deaths. Peter, we get that. That's low-hanging fruit. Let's
Yes,
bring the
sir.
supply chain back to
There's no
America.
question.
Got it. But what are we doing to China specifically? Where's the punitive recourse with China for 100,000 deaths and literally trillions of dollars of assets evaporated on U.S. soil? How are they going to be held accountable for that?
Well, that discussion takes place well above my pay grade, but I think you and I can agree on the fact that China caused the virus. In terms of economic damages, we've got $10 trillion now of fiscal and monetary stimulus we've had to burden our balance sheets with because of the Chinese Communist Party. In addition, we've got close to 40 million Americans on the unemployment lines because of China.
So what are we doing?
And
Peter, how are we going to get them to pay for some of this stuff? How do we get them to pay?
I think that there has to be a real long discussion about compensatory damages. But there's some other things going on here. I mean, we've got the Chinese jackboots trying to extinguish democracy in Hong Kong. Will they go forward on that? Will they fulfill the obligations of their Phase 1 trade deal? I mean, Eric, one of the key
do we
features
lean
of
on
the Phase
them
1 trade
with
deal
trade
was intellectual
policy?
property.
This is your backyard. Do we lean on them with trade policy? Do we hike some fees? Do we hike some taxes? I mean, it's the only recourse we have against them, short of declaring war with China.
Understood, but Eric, you know as well as I do that I'm not the ultimate decision maker here. That's the president, and you also have Congress in play here. It's curious to me that so far only a handful of Republicans have come forward to blame China and discuss appropriate measures. The Democrats seem to be too busy writing checks for illegal aliens in Phase 4 or blaming Donald J. Trump for a pandemic that he didn't create. So again, Eric, I can't answer your question because I'm not the decision maker. All I can tell you is there's serious discussions about all the things that we need to do in response to this economic aggression, this biological aggression, and it's a very serious situation. I mean, this is not a good time in U.S. Chinese Communist Party relationships.
Right. Peter,
but you know, it's like, yes, sir.
Peter, I got to go. I want to leave it there. I ran out of time, but I know if you unleash Peter Navarro on the Chinese, we're going to get some sort of recourse. We're going to get some sort of compensatory damages on the Chinese part. Peter Navarro, keep it up. Appreciate your time. We'll have you back soon.
Anytime you want to talk, Eric, I'm here for you right here on the North Lawn.
We're glad to welcome back California Congressman Devin Nunes. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Listen, I want to get right to this. The media has been pretty harsh on you. I know you had some lawsuits pending, and they're in process. But give us a sense of how close the media is with, let's just say, the people who were involved in the deep state and some of the things they did to General Flynn and what they attempted to do to President Trump.
Well, if you look at the overall Russia hoax, it really was a media operation where the media acted as an arm of the Democratic Party, the DNC, the Clinton campaign, and they worked directly with the dirty cops. Point in being, I think the most obvious case is that you had something from the Steele dossier that was given to a member of the media. They ran a fake news story. The FBI picked that up and then used it to get a FISA warrant ultimately against the Trump campaign. So that's probably the best example, but they are fully involved in this, and then they stayed. That was back in 2016. Then they stayed involved in this all through 17 and 18 and 19, and they still continue today. And then I would add on top of that, Eric, and this is just recently in the news, this issue with Twitter. You have what I call the tech oligarchs. So it's really Facebook, Google, and Twitter that are taking this content, which is 90% is left-wing, and then now they're filtering it, and they're deciding what they believe the American people should see. This is a very dangerous precedent, and it's really threatening the very fabric of our democracy.
I think a tell, and I want to stay on that thing that you pointed out. The Pfizer court is the court that decides whether or not the FBI was going to be allowed to surveil a U.S. citizen. In this case, Donald Trump and his campaign, his advisors on his campaign. They used a fake piece of information that they had a media accomplice write a story about, and then they used that fake media story that was based on lying, wrong evidence to get a warrant to wiretap the Trump campaign. It's scary how complicit the media was. I'll take it one step further, Congressman. You look who ends up on left-leaning media shows: John Brennan, James Clapper, down the line, all the people who are in the heart of what this appears now to be as one big Russian collusion hoax.
Yeah, and so your listeners understand the FISA court. This is for foreign intelligence surveillance. It's used to protect the United States of America from terrorists, from people that are trying to steal our nation's secrets. Very sophisticated capability, 17 different agencies, and it's not supposed to be used against American citizens. So they set up this process where you have this special court that is supposed to be rarely used. Now, who on earth, knowing not what I just said, how would you ever use that against a political campaign? They should have had enough common sense to go to a regular court, get regular warrants. If they really believed that the Trump campaign was an arm of Russia, they really should have taken that to an existing court. And don't forget, in all of this, the ones that were colluding with the Russians were the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign by their own very dossier. So the FBI is sitting on this dirt that was produced by the Democrats in the Clinton campaign that says it's from Russian sources. And then lo and behold, now we find out clearly Christopher Steele could have been compromised by the Russians. So the very thing the FBI was supposedly had these concerns about investigating the Trump campaign, it was actually the Democrats they should have been investigating all along.
Congressman, one of the other things that strikes, I just remember that I was knee-deep in this when it was happening, the thought that the FISA court could have been so used and abused, that it wasn't a tight ship. It wasn't a solid envelope around protecting American citizens and our rights. John McCain was involved in this somehow, too. Was the fact that John McCain, being the Republican senator, being involved in this, the Steele dossier, did that open up some of the windows or the doors at the FISA court to make it a little bit more Swiss cheese, allowing Trump to be investigated?
Well, John McCain comes in later. I would say that was on the second renewal. So they did this 4 times against Carter Page and really the Trump campaign. And if you look at it, the problem is that the law, when Congress wrote this law back in the 70s, the irony of this is that this law was written because of the concern after Watergate of LBJ supposedly targeting U.S. citizens using intelligence, John F. Kennedy using intelligence. So that's the irony in turning this on its head and using it. No one when Congress never imagined back in the late 70s that this would be used against its own citizens in political campaigns.
Yeah, Congressman, I got to leave it there, but you're 100% right. We really, really need to work on that FISA court. Again, Congressman Devin Nunes from California, thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Eric.
This week, the president threatened to pull the RNC from Charlotte, North Carolina, unless Democratic Governor Roy Cooper allows full attendance. Joining me now is the chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, conventions, you and I both know, takes a lot of planning. August, less than 100 days away. Where do we stand?
Well, I think the president's right to ask the governor to give us guidance and assurances that we can have the convention that we contracted to have. So the RNC, we spoke with the governor yesterday. We put a plan in front of him as to how we believe we can keep convention goers safe and healthy. But ultimately, we're going to have to make a decision. Right now in North Carolina, you can't have a gathering of 25 people, of more than 25 people. So that's really, really difficult.
Any indication on which way he's going to go with this? Has he hat tipped you? I mean, but besides the fact that you guys would lose a lot of money, Charlotte would lose a ton of money, and the state of North Carolina would lose hundreds of millions of dollars.
I just know this. The president wants to have it in North Carolina. The president loves the people of North Carolina. I've been working with the mayor for a long time. We really want to make this happen. But of course, it's the president receiving the nomination of our party, and he doesn't want to do that with a gathering of less than 25 people. And there's lots of states who are willing to host a full-scale convention right now. So we're looking at all the options.
Yeah, I know. I saw Governor Kemp in Georgia and also DeSantis in Florida raising their hand saying, pick me, pick me. I know how logistically that would be a nightmare. Ronna, one of the other issues this week, Joe Biden made that comment about dictating whether people were black or not based on whether they were going to vote for him or not. The campaign, your group, is raising money on that. Tell us why this comment is so important to you.
You know, I think it was beyond offensive to say to black voters what Joe Biden essentially said was, you owe me. I've done things for you. I've been there for you, so you owe me your vote. And it's a foregone conclusion rather than I'm going to earn your vote. And as chair of the Republican Party, I want to say to every black voter, look at our party. We want you in our party. We want to earn your vote. We want to represent you. And we want to do better than the Democrat Party has done, taking your vote for granted year after year after year without seeing the types of things you've seen under President Trump with criminal justice reform, HBCU loan forgiveness. You've seen opportunity zones, record low unemployment for the African American community. Things that President Trump has done are things that Democrats have promised. And it's time to reevaluate which party best represents the African American community.
You know, President Trump was elected with about 8% of the African-American vote. What do you think you need for a win in 2020? As far as, you know, we do this all the time. You need 23% of the Hispanic vote. You need X% of the female vote. What is the black vote that you think you need to lock in a 2020 victory?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that type of statistics yet. It's going to be different every state. What I will say, though, is the RNC prior to this pandemic had opened 16 offices in urban communities, primarily black communities. We've started Black Voices for Trump. We are pushing to earn every single vote of every single American based on the record of Donald Trump, not any sort of entitlement or you owe us your vote. We want to earn your vote. And under this president, Hispanic unemployment was at a record low. Black employment was at a record low. Asian. We've done a lot of good things under this administration.
Right. All right, we're going to leave it right there. Ronna McDaniel, thank you very much. And please come back and keep us informed on what you guys decide to do at the Charlotte convention this summer. Thank you, Ronna.
Will do. Thanks, Eric.
Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, was one of only few universities in the nation to not close during this pandemic. Joining now is the university's president, Jerry Falwell, and his wife, Becky. Full disclosure, very good friends of mine. So, guys, Jerry, let me start with you. Despite what the mainstream media predicted, and I really want to talk about what New York Times did to you, what actually happened? How was the school afflicted with coronavirus by the fact that you didn't close?
No, we had 0 cases the whole spring semester on campus. And the New York Times actually was on campus in violation of no trespassing signs that we had posted everywhere to protect our students. Only about 1,200 were living here. Normally it's like 8,000 because there's certain students who didn't have high-speed internet in their homes, and we had converted to completely an online format to comply with the governor's orders. And so they couldn't go back home and do their studies. We had others who had elderly relatives at home. We had others who were international students. So about 1,200 came back, and we had 2 surprise inspections from Governor Northam in Richmond, and we got nothing but glowing reports from the Virginia Department of Health: social distancing, takeout food only, double the janitorial staff cleaning, and so we. But the reporters were here in violation of the no trespassing signs and complete disregard for the public health of our students. And they never talked to us the whole time they were here. New York Times and ProPublica. They talked to a doctor across town who had seen some students who had some upper respiratory allergies or colds and reported there were 12 students with COVID-like symptoms. Well, that doctor told them to talk to the on-campus doctor at the clinic on campus, and they refused. They didn't do it. They never contacted her, Dr. Thomas.
Right.
So we, but on Sunday, following their visit here, we got calls from New York Times around noon. They published the story at 3 o'clock. They already had the story written. So it was a complete setup, a hit job, and it was, New York Times has become more like BuzzFeed than New York Times. It's all about clickbait.
So Becky, I want to talk a little bit about what President Trump did this week. He demanded that places of worship reopen. He said he was going to go to bat for places of worship. What does that mean to you?
That means a lot. Like Jerry had retweeted, somebody said previously this week, how come we can go to Walmart and we can't go to church on Sundays? And Jerry said, why don't we go to Walmart and have church services? Because they think that's important. And for a lot of people, going to their place of worship is as important as getting groceries because it feeds their inner soul. And so I think what President Trump did by going out and opening the churches, I think that'll help a lot of people's attitude and their heart. And I just can't understand how we've all just kind of sat back and let the government take advantage of this coronavirus, which is terrible, but taking our rights away. And that's just unfathomable to me. I just can't imagine us just sitting down and letting our rights be taken away. And especially the churches, our places of worship.
Sure. And I got about a minute or so, you guys. Jerry first and then Becky. Get a little tight here. Keep it tight. Tell us what you want to say to Governor Northam, who's kind of demanding you wear a mask, Jerry.
Here we are 3 months in. I just tweeted today. I've got a mask printed up with a picture of him and his friend in blackface and a KKK mask. And I said, fine. Starting Friday, we all have to wear masks in Virginia. I said, fine, I'll reluctantly wear it, but only if it's got a picture of Governor Blackface on the mask. So look at my Twitter, and I hope everybody buys one. Go.
Becky, what's your mask gonna say? I know you're gonna have a lot prettier mask.
I'm not wearing that mask.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not wearing that mask. And I don't approve of Jerry's tweet either.
She doesn't like my tweet.
But I do think after 3 months, for him now to come on and require us to wear masks is just to instill the fear that the virus, even though the curve has been flattened, even though all the death rates, everything is opening back up and everything is getting better, it's just to remind you what we've just been through for the past 3 months.
People.
It's just a scare tactic. And it's just control. It's 100% control.
We're going to leave it right there. A couple of great Patriots folks. You're looking at them right there. A couple of great friends of mine as well. Jerry Falwell, Becky Falwell. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank you, Eric.
Ahead on America This Week, I discussed the reopening of the states with former Nebraska Attorney General Don Stenberg. We'll look at what states are doing right and what some might consider illegal. And few people know more about the corruption within the FBI than she does. Coming up a little later, former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland is back to discuss the very latest in the saga of General Michael Flynn. He's the former Attorney General for Nebraska, Don Stenberg. Thank you for being here, Attorney General. You know, there are a lot of different states doing a lot of different things in reopening and not reopening. Can you, as Attorney General, tell us what the governors are allowed and not allowed to do, sir?
Well, the basic test, number one, are the regulations fair and reasonable based on the facts? And when there's fundamental personal liberties involved, the test is whether it's the least restrictive means available. And a lot of the orders we're seeing now are no longer constitutionally justified based on the facts as we know them today.
So what is the test? You call it a constitutionality test. How does that happen? Should these things be tried in court in the individual Supreme Courts of each state?
Well, since they're federal constitutional rights, they could be litigated in the federal courts as well. And we are seeing litigation around the country on a variety of legal theories. I think one that's going to be very effective is equal protection. For a lot of small businesses have been closed, while Walmart and Target and other stores have been remaining open. And I think there's a federal equal protection challenge that would be effective for many of those small businesses that remain closed under governors and mayors' orders.
General, will you weigh in on what's going on in Michigan? Governor Whitmer had closed the state, keeps the state a very, let's call it a tourist area of Michigan. She happened to have a second home there. Her husband goes up. I guess he tries to talk a boat launch into launching his speedboat when that was supposed to remain closed. Has Governor Whitmer, has she broken any laws?
Well, that's a good question. That would be more of a question of state law, but it's certainly to do as I say rather than do as I do. And we've seen that in other places as well. The mayor of New York some time back, and as well as other folks who are issuing these orders, and then either they or a relative are violating the same orders. But I'm very concerned about restrictions on church attendance. I think that many of those are unconstitutional and would be held by a federal or state court to be so. Earlier on, we had gun stores closed. Most of those are now open in most states, but the closing of them was a constitutional violation, in my opinion.
Sir, how do we, President Trump has said open the churches, and he was going to fight the governors if they chose not to. Where is that litigated?
Well, I think that would be brought in federal court. Now, the Attorney General of the United States has indicated that he will probably proceed by supporting cases that are filed by someone in a state raising those challenges. But I think the way that the president would assert federal authority would be through the Attorney General of the United States with an appropriate lawsuit.
All right. We're going to leave it right there. We're going to say thank you to former Attorney General for Nebraska, Don Stenberg. Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's hear from both sides of the aisle. Welcome back political commentator Amisha Cross and former deputy assistant to President Trump, host of America First on Salem Radio, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Seb, there's back and forth between the president and Twitter and Facebook this week. President saying he may put a little extra scrutiny on Twitter and some other social media platforms because of Twitter fact-checking one of his tweets. I think Twitter has a lot of risk here by opening themselves up to not just a platform, making themselves a news service, and they'll have to abide by substantial regulations if they do that. What are your thoughts?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Eric. When these platforms were originally regulated, the statute stated that these are not news platforms, that these are social community platforms, and as such, they are not regulated by the same policies and the same strictures that apply to libel laws, that apply to regular newspapers or news outlets. They've got away with this for far too long. And right now we've seen Twitter, we've seen Jack Dorsey insert himself into an election campaign. I think this rings the death knell for these platforms as so-called social media, and these have now become editorial entities.
And what's your side of the aisle say, Amisha, with this back and forth with the president?
There's a certain level of responsibility that social media organizations and entities play in making sure that information spread there is not misinformation, is not lies. What we see from President Trump and the Trump administration continually, whether it's talking about coronavirus and perpetuating a lie about a drug that we know does not work, whether it is him chasing after and making false statements about murder regarding Joe Scarborough. We're seeing so much now coming out of this presidency and this president. Meanwhile, he's gotten away with it for over 9 years on social media, saying things that were completely unfounded and untrue. But as president, there is something to be said about you taking that standpoint from the White House and people evidently sharing it hundreds of thousands of times over as fact.
I understand what you're saying, and I get that, but that would end up being a news service, as Sebastian pointed out, under a completely different animal. But let me ask you this. Kathy Griffin this week tweeted that she hoped someone injected the president with air so that basically he would die, and then she backed it up. She doubled and tripled down on that. How in what world are we where there's fact-checking on the president on a comment about mail-in voting and is bad, but saying that you want to kill the president is still okay? Because she, at least as of this airing, she was still up on Twitter.
Kathy Griffin's comments are not okay. Kathy Griffin has not been okay for a very long time. I do think that she should also be regulated and possibly kicked off of Twitter or suspended in some way herself. But we cannot argue that mail-in voting is something that helps to perpetuate, to a certain extent, what we're seeing this president say, that this is fraud. He himself mail-in vote. He's spreading lies. It is important that those things be fact-checked and the air cleared.
All right, final thought, Sebastian.
Well, look, Amisha clearly has a dog in this fight. She's been spreading lies and propaganda for years about Russian collusion. She just, without any factual basis, says a drug that doctors such as Mark Siegel said saved his father's life, and I mean hydroxychloroquine. She says that's not true. So she doesn't want to be fact-checked.
The American Hospital Association and the American Medical Association have all denied.
Are you going to interrupt me again? Because that's what the left does. Don't lie on national television.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. We go back and forth on so many topics. You know, I get these phone calls every week on this We Hear You, and a lot of it surrounding the two of you guys. I'll tell you what, you bring great debate. Amisha and Sebastian, thank you guys both so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Coming up next on America This Week, she's one of the most intelligent people I've had the pleasure of interviewing. We'll catch up with KT McFarland. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. And the calls haven't stopped coming in. We're still listening, and we still hear you. Call 888-601-0032, toll free, and leave me a message about what's on your mind. What's got you angry? What have we done right? What have we done wrong? You can say literally anything you want. No judgment and no censorship. Here are just a few more calls we've gotten this week.
Eric, I see you once again refused to go to a open business. You could have gone to an open bowling alley.
I would love to know if you could refuse me service if I'm not wearing a shirt and shoes. Why can't you refuse me service if I'm not wearing a mask?
But I want to congratulate you. You finally put that tie back on. You look much more credible and professional.
Okay, to the guy about the bowling alley. Bowling alleys were closed last week when we were there. That's why we couldn't find an open bowling alley. Otherwise, certainly we would. Look, we found an open hair salon, Haven Hair Salon, right here in Charleston, South Carolina. Again, the number is 888-601-0032. And about the tie, I'm not sure yet. 888-601-0032. Let me know what you think about the tie. Right now, it's more important than ever for you to be heard. Follow me on Twitter at Eric Bolling and ericbolling.com, and we'll make sure they hear you.
Sharyl Attkisson asks the tough questions.
Shouldn't those conflicts of interest have been disclosed?
And brings you the untold story.
I couldn't believe that the United States was doing this to my son.
Stories you won't see anywhere else. Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson.
Well, this is someone who knows all too well about the deep state and corruption in the FBI. Former Deputy National Security Advisor for President Trump and author of a recently released awesome book called The Revolution. KT McFarland is back. KT, the onions, what do they call it? The layers of the onion keep being pulled back.
Yeah.
What is the latest on? First of all, have you talked to General Flynn recently?
No, I texted him after the Justice Department advised the charges to be dropped. But for legal reasons, both his lawyer and my lawyer have said that we shouldn't talk to each other. You know, there may be at some point in the future I'd be asked to testify, and I don't want to jeopardize that at all.
So tell us what's happening right now. The Department of Justice says Bill Barr recommended that these charges against General Flynn be dropped, but the judge in the case is giving them a hard time. Can you break it down for us?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really go the ins and outs of the legal thing, but to me it's pretty straightforward. The Justice Department determined that it overreached, that it abused their power, and so they decided to drop charges against General Flynn. You know, Eric, there was never a crime in the first place. What General Flynn did with the Russian ambassador, talking to the Russian ambassador, not only was that allowed, it would have been a malpractice of foreign policy if he hadn't talked to the Russian ambassador about the incoming Trump administration. So the whole thing was cooked up. And as you say, the onion is peeling back. Well, what we're seeing is more and more evidence that the Obama administration, senior officials in the intelligence community, their pals in the media, they just created this whole thing. It was a hoax. There was never any foundation. There was never any collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and the intelligence officials, the senior officials, Brennan and Clapper and Comey, they were saying that in testimony before closed doors in Congress, and yet they were running out to the media and saying, oh, there's definitely collusion. Oh, President Trump is a Russian asset. So they were lying to the American people. And for 3 years, they dragged the American people through this hoax and this sham and trying to destroy the Trump presidency. Shame on them.
And they dragged you too, KT. Can you refresh our audience's memory about what they did to you?
Okay, so here's what happened, is that the Mueller investigation and the FBI, they decided that they wanted to get President Trump on something, on anything. And they were setting people up, like me, like General Flynn, for what are called perjury traps. In other words, we didn't commit any crimes. But if they could take our files and our records and say, well, you met on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. What did you discuss? And if you got the date wrong, and if you thought it was on Wednesday, they could say, well, that's a lie. You should have remembered that was so important. We're going to charge you with perjury. That's a perjury trap. And in the end, you have to spend hundreds of thousands, in General Flynn's case, millions of dollars, defending himself, proving his innocence. But all along, what they wanted to do was to get people like me, people like General Flynn, to admit guilt to crimes that we didn't commit. And what they really wanted was for me and others to say President Trump did things that he didn't do. Why? Because the end goal was always to bring down President Trump.
You know, and I look back and over the years, KT, not that long ago, James Clapper lied. I mean, he literally lied to a Senate panel about whether the NSA was spying on Americans or not. He had to come back and admit he lied to the Senate, yet nothing happens to him. You look at Brennan, who leaked information all over the place. You look at James Comey, who admitted leaking confidential information because he wanted the New York Times to get it. He leaked it to a friend who leaked it to the New York Times. Yet where's the accountability? Why aren't they right now being indicted and investigated? Where's the disconnect?
Okay, I think that the Justice Department had two sets of rules. One that they applied to President Trump and his people, and another one that they applied to their own people in the Justice Department. Now, normally, you know, I guess I'd be cynical enough to say they'll never hold those guys accountable. I think this time it's different. President Trump has assured me personally, on the phone and in person, as recently as a couple of weeks ago that he is going to hold those people accountable, that he is not going to let it slide under the rug, that he is going to make sure that we find out what really happened and to hold them accountable. And I also think this time it's so big. It's so obvious. There's so much more evidence of abuse of power that I don't think it goes away until the truth is found out.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope and we do get to see some justice, at least equal justice under the law. KT McFarland, thank you so much. Again, the book, Revolution, go out and grab a copy of that. Thank you, KT. Every week we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our great country. Sergeant Charles Rob Roberts with the Glen Ridge, New Jersey Police Department died after contracting the coronavirus earlier this month. He was with the department for 20 years and was posthumously promoted to the rank of sergeant. Sergeant Roberts left behind a wife and 3 children. Corrections Officer Maria Mendez with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice also succumbed to COVID-19 this month. Officer Mendez served the department for 10 years. She's survived by her 4 children. Rest in peace, officers.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand. United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand.
Joining me now is Ron Dotzauer, the founder and CEO of Strategies 360, a public affairs firm. Ron also has a 30-year history in politics. Ron, thank you for being here today. We wanted to ask you about the issue of mail-in ballots. How secure nationally are mail-in ballots?
Well, I think they're very secure. And we've had a 15-year history here in Washington State of voting by mail, and we've had no issues around voter fraud, voter irregularities whatsoever. In my former life, Eric, when I first got started in this business, 2 years after I was back from Vietnam, I was elected as a county auditor, which is the same as a county clerk in other places. And so my job was counting ballots. And we were an early advocate of the vote by mail process. And because it brought integrity, it brought convenience, it brought an opportunity for people to participate. And we've seen across America this election cycle both Republicans, Democrats, independents who have embraced the vote by mail for some obvious reasons. One, from a health standpoint,
Ron,
today.
Ron, allow me to jump in here. I want to ask you, the mail-in ballots, I see all these pictures, now it could be fraudulent, I don't know, of boxes of ballots that were for one state ending up in another state, and basically they're saying they're taking them out of the system. Can you confidently say that mailing your ballot in is just as safe and will be counted just as equally safely as if you actually go into a polling place, pull the drape and punch your candidate's name?
Eric, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we've had situations back in the day when we had voting at the polling places. There's more handling of the ballots in a polling place environment than there is in a vote by mail. Let me give you an example. I was involved with an elections process in the early 2000s where a whole box of ballots that was being returned from a polling place to an election counting place that got placed in a broom closet and weren't found until about 2 weeks after the elections. And that was voting at the polling places. So I would argue that there's even more management and more rooms for irregularities potentially at the polling place than there is vote by mail.
All right, Ron, we're going to leave it there. Yeah, it's amazing that of all the elections around the world, that this is the safest, yet all the slippage happens. Ron Dotzauer, thank you very much. Strategies 360.
My pleasure, Eric. Thank you.
Straight ahead, TikTok never fails to entertain, and wait till you hear this impression of POTUS from a little younger perspective. You don't want to miss this viral video.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. And before we go, here's something that caught the attention of America this week. TikTok is now more popular than ever as people have had a little more time to make videos. User Noah, aka The Real NRP, created this amusing little piece. Watch.
Welcome back to another episode of The Preschool Apprentice, okay? Today we were doing fantastic things, fantastic. We were playing outside, it was fantastic, totally great. We had the little slide, we were sliding down very fast, very quickly. But then all of a sudden something happened, something very bad, very bad. The teacher blew what's called a whistle. I hate people that blow whistles.
That was a pretty darn good impression of the Commander-in-Chief. It was huge. And that's it for us tonight, folks. Thanks again to Haven Hair and Skin Salon for letting us come back and enjoy their open hair salon. Be sure to book an appointment with your favorite hair salon. It's about time to get rid of that quarantine hair. Tonight, we leave you with some signs that the nation is opening back up, getting back to work, and getting back to fun. Have a great night and a great week, America.